Listen to this statistic. Of all the new teachers who started this fall across the country, half will quit teaching within 5 years, but it gets worse. In low-income urban schools, half the new teachers will be gone in 2 to 3 years. Well, a teacher training program at the University of Chicago is out to change that. It's been in business 6 years, and 95% of their grads are still teaching, and all are in urban schools, most in Chicago. What's the program doing differently? Here's Jay Shefsky.
Can you see the book that you're reading? Can you show me the cover?
Yes. Lloyd Wafer is a third-grade teacher at Bret Harte's school on the South Side. He says that when other teachers hear about the length of his training, they can't believe it.
I've never talked to another person from another program who had that much in-classroom experience before they were an actual teacher.
Lloyd trained at the University of Chicago's Urban Teacher Education Program, or UTEP. He student taught for a summer, then a full school year, then another summer.
In fact, I've talked to teachers who have had just one summer, and that was it for their student teaching.
You wouldn't want a doctor who'd had a 6-week intensive doctor course to treat you.
Tim Knowles runs the University of Chicago Institute that includes UTEP. He says that longer training would be useful for all teachers, but it is essential for teachers headed for urban schools.
Teaching is expert work. It's very difficult to, at a high level, to learn how to address the needs of 25 or 30 children who are across a broad spectrum in terms of their academic readiness. We think this takes real time, it takes intense clinical preparation, and it takes ongoing support.
So, UTEP difference number 1, more classroom experience. Difference number 2, what they call context-specific training. In other words, the training you get to teach in an affluent suburb should be different than the training for a low-income urban school.
The Wonderful Things About a House, illustrated by Wendy Anderson Halprin.
Erin Robertson is a UTEP student teacher in Carrie Walsh's 2nd grade class.
They have a great deal of training before they come into the classroom, and they come in with a wealth of knowledge that I feel like maybe I didn't get before I entered the field.
We're going to have time to share.
In most urban schools, as a new teacher, it's kind of a very lonely position. You have a lot of students, you have a lot of work to catch up on with the children, and by having their experience in an urban setting and getting to talk about challenges and expectations before they get in there, I think that they're set up for success.
And they keep talking about those challenges once they start their student teaching.
All I said to him was, he hadn't written anything in his journal. This is not acceptable 2nd grade behavior. I will not tolerate this again.
The idea is that you bring your problem to the group, and as a group, we think about the problem.
And he started to tear up, and so I didn't know what to do. Should I say, I understand you're crying right now, but I still don't tolerate this, or do I ignore it?
They address the practical, immediate concern, but they say it doesn't stop there.
For a moment, it sort of paralyzed you, oh my gosh, I just came over here to tell you that you haven't lived up to these very clear expectations, and now you're having a meltdown.
It's all about improving your practice through self-reflection. That's a word you hear a lot around here.
We do a lot of reflecting. We take a lot of notes on our students, on our teaching. We write journals, and so you can't just say, well, today I did a math lesson and they learned math. That's not enough. You need to really figure out what happened and why.
If you don't have the time or space to sort that stuff out, then you're going to find yourself in the middle of an underserved school with limited resources, a small room, lots of kids, and have to make all of those decisions that go along with just teaching anyway.
There are certain characteristics that have been associated with people who enter the work of teaching, right? These are noble people, these are caring people, these are nurturers, and I think all of that is important. But in UTEP, we really want our aspiring teachers to think about teaching as intellectual work, and that requires the analytic skills.
Marv Hoffman co-founded UTEP after about 40 years as a teacher and principal, mostly in urban schools. He says they conceived the program after trying to help a group of new Chicago public school teachers who had trained elsewhere.
And they were really not being successful in their urban classrooms. So we asked ourselves a question, what is it that was missing in their preparation?
He says many of them knew their subject matter, but lacked some basic skills that are not as essential in more affluent schools, like teaching beginning reading.
We know now that it takes more than really strong content knowledge to be an effective teacher, especially in urban communities.
Tanika Island-Smith is the principal of a University of Chicago-run charter school that is a site for UTEP student teachers.
And I think the Urban Teacher Education Program spends time developing that skill set in terms of just presence and temperament and connecting with students and connecting with families. You have to be able to get the kids to sit down and listen to you and want to listen to you to communicate whatever the content is.
And Marv Hoffman says they noticed something else lacking in traditional teacher training.
Most interesting and most puzzling was the fact that there was no attention paid to issues of race, class, and culture.
Teaching is still predominantly a middle-class white girls profession, and so if we're going to help teachers stay in urban schools and work effectively with urban children, then I think a big part of our challenge is in thinking about the kinds of boundary crossings that those teachers have to make in communicating expectations, in communicating content, in communicating with parents and families. A large part of that has to do with first just understanding who you are and understanding what scares you and understanding what you don't know.
I think assuming kind of a teacher personality in front of children has been really hard. Because I heard some talking over here, so you need to be quiet. You know, I want them to like me, and it's been hard for me to realize there are times where they're not going to like the things that I'm asking them to do.
Now that Lloyd Wafer is a full-time teacher, he's benefiting from another unusual part of the UTEP program: 3 full years of support after graduation.
It's been amazing. Obviously, it was absolutely necessary last year, especially with the overwhelming nature of the first year of teaching. But moving into the second year, the dynamic has almost shifted, because the first year was so, I need your help. Help me with this, help me with that. And already this year it's more of, well, let's see what we can think about together.
Lloyd's mentor, Bill Kennedy, says Lloyd wrestled with the same thing that gives most new teachers trouble: discipline. Though these days they call it classroom management.
He knew what he was supposed to be doing, and we were able to talk about what he should be doing, but teachers have to learn so many different things on the job that it's very hard to integrate all the things that you know and actually put them into practice. I think a lot of people leave because they feel like powerless as teachers, and because they don't have good classroom management, and I think we are able to really support them through that process.
So our struggle in preparing urban teachers is to make them, is to be as open and as honest about the difficulties that they're going to face and the obstacles that exist in the communities in which they're teaching, but still to come away with a sense of hope, and so we always feel like we're walking this, on this tightrope between hope and despair, in this work, and I think unfortunately a lot of teachers who are not supported well, in those early years succumb to the despair.
For Chicago Tonight, this is Jay Shefsky.
Until this year, the Urban Teacher Education Program only trained elementary and middle school teachers. This fall, they begin a program for high school teachers. You can find more information about it on our website, WTTW.com/ChicagoTonight.